The South American rainforest, the richest and most varied assemblage of life in the world. Those are howler monkeys up there. There are around 50 different kinds of monkeys in these forests. Some of the most beautiful creatures here are hummingbirds. 54 different kinds have been found within a few miles of where I'm standing, and over 300 have been found in South America as a whole. In fact, nobody knows exactly how many different kinds of animals there are here. Wherever you look, there's life. There are several 100,000 different insects that have been named, and without doubt many hundreds more that haven't. And all these varied creatures and plants form one complex mosaic. The orchid needs the bee to pollinate it. The anteater couldn't have existed before the ants, so unless the whole complex was brought into existence in one flash of instant creation, different organisms must have appeared at different times. But which came first? And why should there be such an immense variety? Such questions obsessed a young 24-year-old Englishman who came to these forests in 1832. His name was Charles Darwin, and he was enthralled almost to the point of ecstasy by the richness of life that he found here. In one day, in a small area, he discovered 69 different species of beetle. As he wrote in his journal, it's enough to disturb the composure of the entomologist's mind to contemplate the future dimension of a complete catalogue. The conventional view of the time was that each and every species of animal and plant had been individually created by God. And Darwin was no atheist. During the next 3 years, the Beagle sailed around South America and up into the Pacific. 600 miles west of Ecuador, they came to the lonely Galapagos Islands. It was here on these volcanic islands that Darwin's doubts and puzzles about the creation of species were reawakened. Everywhere, Darwin found creatures that bore a general resemblance to those that he had seen on the mainland. But nearly all was slightly different. These, for example, were without doubt cormorants, similar to those that he had seen flying along Brazilian rivers. But here in the Galapagos, their wings were so small and with such stunted feathers that the birds had lost their powers of flight. And these were clearly iguanas. He had seen such creatures climbing trees and eating leaves in the South American forests. But here on the Galapagos, where there was little vegetation, these iguanas fed on seaweed. And they were not the same. Smaller, darker, and with unusually long claws to help them keep a foothold among the crashing breakers. They also had extraordinary habits, swimming fearlessly out to sea and diving deep to graze on the seabed. The Galapagos Islands got their name from the herds of tortoises that live on them, and which sailors for centuries had slaughtered for food. But these too were very obviously different from any mainland tortoise. They were many, many times bigger. The English vice-governor of the islands told Darwin that he could tell without difficulty which island a particular tortoise came from by its shape. This one, for example, with its deep, rounded shell, comes from a well-watered island where it can feed mainly on vegetation on the ground. This one, on the other hand, has a peak to the front of its shell that enables it to stretch its long neck upwards. It comes from an arid island, where the tortoises often have to crane up to reach the only food available, the branches of trees and cactus. The suspicion grew in Darwin's mind that species were not fixed forever. Perhaps these tortoises were all descended from common ancestors and had changed to suit their particular islands. The differences that Darwin had noticed amongst these Galapagos animals were, of course, all tiny. But if they could develop, wasn't it possible that over the thousands or millions of years, a whole series of such differences might add up to one revolutionary change? Was it not possible, perhaps, that in the past amphibians had developed watertight skins and so turned into reptiles? Or that a lizard-like reptile had developed a feathery kind of scale and so become a bird? And even that man himself might be descended from a group of tree-swinging apes. In truth, the idea was not a new one. Other people before Darwin had suggested that all life on Earth might have a common ancestry. But Darwin went further. He gave the idea irresistible force by suggesting a mechanism which might have brought that about. He called the mechanism natural selection. Put briefly, his argument was this: individuals of the same species are not absolutely identical. Some of these giant tortoise hatchlings may have from birth slightly longer necks than others. In times of drought, they will be able to reach leaves and live, while the shorter-necked ones die. So those best fitted for the environment will transmit their characteristics to their offspring. After countless generations, the tortoises on arid islands will have longer necks than those on well-watered ones. And so one species will have given rise to another.